you're going to increase such foot traffic and, people, in and out of the facility and using and patronizing a lot of our local restaurants and shows?
I've got a million square feet of exhibit space that I want to fill every day. And the practical matter is that we have to draw people in, right? These customers come to Philadelphia on a cycle. We had not been doing a good job in the past of retaining those customers. So some customers were not coming back, or they were canceling, or they weren't considering Philadelphia. They're considering Philadelphia now. So we're really on an aggressive path to make sure, and you remember what I said earlier, if it doesn't save the taxpayers money or make the taxpayers money, we're really not putting it on a priority list. This will do both. This will save the taxpayers $950,000 just to start in capital investment, not to mention the cost of maintenance and utilities to maintain and keep the signs going if we had to pay for them ourselves. So that's just a start. Then you add the layer of revenue sharing that would come with the rent or lease agreement associated with the signage on our property, and we're looking at probably on the magnitude of at least a $6 million net savings over the course of the program, more likely somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 million.
And this obviously fills with the art commission's approval, it fulfills some of your public art obligation?
Absolutely. We also are going to be dedicating, as part of the expansion, we're working with the city and the art department of the city, the PAFA, as well as the Commission on the Arts, the Pennsylvania Commission on the Arts. We'll be investing somewhere on the order of $1.2 million in art in the expanded project. So this will help us there too. So we're really in great shape right now. This program would be a major boost for our capital program. It would allow us to put things right back to make us more competitive with peer facilities around the country, make Philadelphia the great choice that it is.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councilman. I should mention for the record, the letters that were mentioned in support of this will be made part of the overall record. Okay. Any other questions? Councilwoman Tasca?
I'd just like to thank our executive director of the convention center. He's doing a great job, and we appreciate all the new activity over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you all very much.
Mr. Chairman, I have my board resolution. Could I have that read into the record, please?
I should have said something about Al Mazzarella. He was over there.
Okay. Yeah. It's a conspiracy. Okay. Let's, Ms. Marconi, you want to call the other panel, please?
Adisu Hapti and Bruce Marks, Jeff Breff, and Michael McGettigan.
Okay, whoever like to come up first? Why don't you just sit, we'll call you up. Okay. Who'd like to go first? Please identify yourself and proceed.
My name is Bruce Marks. My unit is at 201 North Broad Street, directly across from the proposed UED on North Broad Street. I support the proposed UED, believe it will help the vibrancy of North Broad Street and the nonprofit organizations in that area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who'd like to go next?
Hi, how are you? My name is Adisu Hapte, and I'm the owner of Jake's Pizza, located directly across the street where the UAD will be going up Broad and Race. And I'm actually looking forward to this UAD going up. I think will bring more people to that corner. Being the main entrance, even though the facade of the convention center is located on Broad Street, but actually technically the main entrance of the convention center is located at 12 and Arch. And the majority of the convention actually takes place there. But to bring some kind of an advertising of that magnitude, an art piece to the corner of Broad and Race will really help our area and light up that area significantly. And I'm actually looking forward to it, and I want to thank Catalyst for taking their time to get us involved and implementing this program, and I thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
Good morning.
Morning.
Jeff Braff, President of Center City Residents Association. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, one of the registered 564 nonprofits in the city that you saw on the screen. So I guess we'll get our minute in the sun. We're not slated to get money, but we will get under the proposal. I assume we'll be a beneficiary of an opportunity to display what we do on the screens. Nonetheless, Center City Residents Association joins with the Planning Commission in opposition to the UED overlay. To their credit, Mr. Barkowski and his team made a presentation very similar to that which you saw here today to my board. About 30 members in attendance. Discussion afterwards, the board was unanimous in its opposition to the concept. Mr. Heenan has been working for more than a year on non-accessory billboards, 3 years. This is designed as an overlay. Let's be clear, this will be an exemption from the legislation that Mr. Heenan has and his group has been working on for many years. We had already an exception, an overlay in Market East, and the rationale for that was that that was going to promote economic development in Market East. No such rationale here. We're talking about very vibrant locations that are already developed. You all saw the presentation. I saw a number of you were kind of mesmerized by it. Many of you probably seen it before. These things could be kind of cool. No question about it. And the amendments, Councilman Squilla, I think a lot of those are very good amendments and substantially improve the proposed bill. But at the end of the day, folks, these are giant commercial billboards that are going to be in very prominent places. And when I say giant, we're talking about 58 feet in the legislation. That's 6 stories. CCRA did not oppose the cube in front of the Kimmel Center that Mr. Biederman talked about before. Just a whole different scale. And Councilwoman Bass, when you asked about what was in the Planning Commission's mind as to why they opposed, and Mr. Jestrup talked about, the Commission said they had concerns about the impact on the public realm. Their focus there was on the size and the height of these and the enormity. And 70% of the content is going to be commercial. Let's not forget that. I have nothing more to add, but I hope that adds a little bit of insight. I don't know what the commission was thinking about, but I can tell you what my board members are thinking. 58 feet of commercial advertising in your face. It's very different than what we have at the Kimmel Center, and I'm sure we could do something a lot that would be good for the convention center. Doesn't have to be so gargantuan and in your face. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Braff, let me just ask one question. I know, and in fairness, you guys have been very consistent on this, but for the most part, and I know you said you didn't oppose the Kimmel site, but you've pretty much been against any kind of real advertising, lighted advertising in the neighborhood, right? Because I remember when I came to the Civic Association with the newsstand, which was clearly a lot less bright, large than this is, and I kind of heard the same argument, that it was too bright and it was going to be distractive and it was overbearing. Now, I don't think anybody, since those things have been put up, has used any of those words. But it's, at least that I know of, nobody said it to me.
And we haven't seen what was contemplated. All we have now is the.
Right. Well, but I mean, how can I put this? It is Center City, and it's different. Isn't that different? Don't you have to consider that it's different from a lot of the other neighborhoods in the city?
Absolutely, absolutely. It adds to the vibrancy.
Right. Okay. That's my, so you do consider that when you make a decision.
Absolutely. But we're talking here 6-story high structures, 3-dimensional, in your face, in very prominent areas, and we don't think it's appropriate.
Okay. I appreciate your opinion. Councilwoman Bass?
You know, I just wanted to go back. Thank you. I just wanted to go back and, as I understand, just to clarify that PennDOT, the Planning Commission, and the Art Commission would have to approve it before the design would be found acceptable to go into a location. So it's not like a 6-foot, big old thing would just drop into a neighborhood overnight.
They're not going to approve the advertising that's going to appear on.
Right, not the advertising, but the actual.
Remember what you saw with Council President Clark up there. You didn't see any commercials. What you saw were nice things that were kind of cool. I think there's a distinction between those two.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Okay, Councilman Scrolls is going to come over here because the mic isn't working, so. We'll get to you, sir. You'll be next, okay?
Just one question. I know you heard of the amendments that we did add about approval of the Art Commission.
And PennDOT, which I think is an excellent
Right.
idea.
So, I mean,
don't want to jeopardize that funding.
Exactly. So now we know that, that will be taken care of, and hopefully you could bring that back to your board and let them understand that we took under consideration your concerns and added them to the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilwoman Tasca?
Well, I just think that for the presentation, they were ideas, but not the definite. So certainly the community would have a say in what and size in terms of what would go in the Center City area, and particularly along Market Street, where it is becoming more commercial, and and we need some vibrancy in Philadelphia to wake us up. We look like a big country town, so it doesn't help to have a little bright sign someplace. But I don't live in Center City, so I understand what you're talking about. But certainly your input would be very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank all three of you. Okay. Sir, you want to come up and, is there anyone else here other than this gentleman that wants to testify? Okay, he'll be the final one. Please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Oh, God. Does this work? Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Rules Committee. My name is Michael McEdigan, born and raised in Philadelphia, as was my dad, granddad, and my son, who just finished 12 years of Philly public schools and just got into Haverford College on a pretty decent ride. We won't go too broke. So I guess there's been an attempt to kind of go into minutiae, talking about nits and little bits of measurement, and I want to say, I brought this little, you may have noticed a TV on a stick I brought to give you a little sense of it, and I would say I feel that definitely cheapened the feel of this room and is an ugly distraction. And I could probably make money by saying I could reach an incredibly exclusive audience by showing commercials and things aimed directly at you. But I think that would be wrong and indignity to this room. The term art was brought up a lot, and the Wanamaker Eagle was brought up as a comparison. I can only say to that I know the Wanamaker Eagle. I've met people at the Wanamaker Eagle. The Wanamaker Eagle is a favorite of mine, and these UEDs are no Wanamaker Eagle. But I guess the main thing, too, and this is something all of us are being born ceaselessly back into the past. I'm 60 years old. I think most of the Rules Committee is getting up there. And we have a tendency to maybe be buffaloed a little bit by the use of technology, but younger people aren't. I borrowed that iPad yesterday at Indy Hall, the city's first co-working space, an anchor of Nerd Street, Philly, where everybody's working on little machines the whole time. The general response from those people, most of them under 30, was, go get them. That stuff is crap. Not one of the people I spoke there was working or having anything to do with outdoor marketing. And the reasons are very simple. If you read Adweek or scan any of it, the easiest show of hands in here would be, say, who does not have a smartphone? You know, I mean, seriously, everybody has one. And the vanity of proposing that, like in some medieval city, we would need to gather by these LED machines to be told that there's an Amber Alert last night at 2 o'clock, which I got on my mobile device. Mobile is the future, and everybody at Indy Hall knows it. Everybody young I speak to knows it. It's targeted. It is measurable. Outdoor cannot be efficiently measured. It cannot be targeted. And in fact, they are shying away from any deliberate proof of how well it works. They could do scans to show that drivers will be distracted on Broad Street and look at that sign that you place outside the convention center, but they will not do those measurements because it would expose them to liability. So the remaining scraps of the billboard industry are trying to change them into television sets and place them by expressways and by pedestrians and by our public streets, but they do not and will not ever state how effective they are at distracting drivers because that will open them to liability. Nonetheless, if it happens, I submit that as partners with Mr. Barkowski, you may be parties to liability on that, and Philadelphia has a lot of lawyers. Speaking of lawyers, just an observation, Mr. Barkowski has been associated with using the courts significantly along the main line to force billboards into cities and townships that don't wish them to be there. Before you partner up or work with him, I think you should keep that in mind. Now, some of the specific things that were stated here by various supporters, including the fellow from the Avenue of the Arts and the Convention Center. The Convention Center gentleman was stating that he had a problem with people finding the Convention Center by the time they reached Broad and Arch, and thus that sign would have utility, to which I say, perhaps you should fire your marketing people. I have been to convention centers in recent years in Los Angeles, Las Vegas, London, Atlanta, and New York City, and none relied on outdoor electronic signs to let me know what was going on inside, except in a very, very brief way. Generally, they use often movie marquees or mere banners. Everything was transmitted through iPads and smart devices. So putting a bet on that you're putting a bet on that we need to reach people through a glorified billboard in the front of those businesses is just being sort of hoodooed. I would also submit that we are not Houston, Austin, or Trevose. We are the city of Philadelphia with the Museum of Art, the Rodin Museum, the Barnes. The aesthetic bar is set very high in Philadelphia, as we can see just by looking around and by the building where all this work is transacted. I looked at that presentation, and I look at a lot of digital presentations, probably more than is healthy for me. I live in a digital world, and I don't know how long Catalyst and Mr. Barkowski have had to work on that. I would not even call it, and can we go on the record? Is everything I'm saying on the record? So I may be the first person in here to go on record as saying, I'm sorry, those are fugly. Those are fugly, please, F-U-G-L-Y. And I really think there's very little room for disagreement. I do not have a $4,000 aesthetic or taste meter as opposed to a nit meter. But I think it's pretty clear that that's not a very high bar at all set in that PowerPoint we just looked at. It gives me very little confidence. And speaking of lack of confidence, we had the Avenue of the Arts gentleman saying, I think the figure in question here, year one, is about $125,000. Place that against the Kimmel Centers and the Suzanne Roberts Theater recently shuttered and all the other construction there. I'm not sure I would bet on that guy's advice on what new buildings or constructions are going to be the most financially remunerative to the city. I'm almost done.
Thank you.
Finally, he mentions he's attempting to sort of greenwash this a little bit the way the casino said we'll give money to schools and so on, and try and get into the argument of how many slots versus how many kids helped. We're going to help these nonprofits. I think you are immediately, it's not a slippery slope, it is a cliff where immediately you introduce the political problem of who doesn't get the money from that blight and why my business or my nonprofit is closer. So you have an effect of splitting it. You have an effect of laziness because those people are supposed to do their jobs and get money other ways rather than pimping off our public environment for a little bit of short money on these UEDs, which is, I got to say, even that betrays a lack of real planning or thought in the marketing to come up with UEDs while we're in the midst of the longest war in our country's history. There's some brand names that weren't mentioned. Philadelphia itself is a brand name, and I don't mean the cream cheese, I mean the city. We have a lot of problems. We have carpenters fussing around outside the convention center. We have our schools. They consume huge amounts of your time, and they consume the time of other businesses and people wishing to settle here. You want to defend the brand of Philadelphia, and by putting up these TVs on a stick, people of sophistication look and say, they did that. That's the kind of thing that makes me think maybe I'll go a little bit further down to Raleigh, North Carolina, to their tech triangle or somewhere where they don't put up with that. Additionally, city council themselves, it's going to hurt you in two ways. One is the Rules Commission, and then later the entire council. If you say yes or don't cut this idea off now, think of the other junk that's coming down the road, because this is junk. And you're going to have other people going, I can make a little money by doing this or that. It means you're going to have you've lowered the bar, and you're going to have to entertain more junk and waste more time when you should be saving schools so that other kids can have the experience my son did at Masterman, which is rare as hen's teeth in Philadelphia. Your time is important. You shouldn't waste it on this stuff. And then lastly, close. If I have a business near LEDs, we're trying to measure the brightness, the nits. There's the effect of LEDs on people, but also a business. If I have a business or a nonprofit or some institution near these, and I see what they've done to the streetscape, I'm going to go and push the envelope and make my signs brighter and try and push it and get other stuff, and you end up in a garish area, which I think some people have said, oh, there's sort of this, that maybe we could be Times Square, or maybe that. If for us to be Times Square, we're going to have to do this by a factor of 100. The other is, the New York Times has recently reported that Times Square is not a success. They only sell T-shirts. The local merchants are having a huge problem. They've succeeded in attracting people. They've created a public spectacle, but there's actually no economic foundation for what they have done there, and it has huge enforcement issues. Everything I'm saying can be checked out, that mobile is the way to go, that billboards are dying, that a Times Square sign area is not an unalloyed good to the city, no matter what it makes for those people who do it. And there's a couple of real big icons that are reasons that people come to the city. And we're sort of saying, oh, wow, maybe if we got this gigantic LED sign made of, I think, mostly Chinese components that employs almost no one once it's installed other than a few switches and programmers, that it's going to somehow attract people that are going to go, geez, stuff that lights up. The things that attract people to Philly the most are a bell that doesn't ring, a boxer statue that doesn't box, a piece of paper in a case signed in 1776. I think those we have and an art museum where the vast majority of stuff on the wall does not light up. Those are the things that bring tourists here, not a couple of gimmicks on sticks in a few areas where they've obviously been separated, almost as though they have realized subconsciously the toxicity and how poorly it affects our streetscape. They're going, oh, we'll start by just putting these in, until other nonprofits go, oh, if he put 5 more up, we'd get some more money instead of looking for it ourselves. Those are the problems. I think you have to protect Philly's brand, protect Philly's icons, and not put in this kind of ersatz stuff.
All right, sir, if I could ask you, please.
Thank you very much. I hope you'll check into
Thank
the
you.
stuff I've said, because I think you'll find it checks out.
Thank you for your
Good
opinion.
afternoon.
Is there anyone else here to testify on this bill? Ms. Barkat, I don't want to go back and forth on that, okay? You made your testimony, okay? You made it, sir, okay? Because otherwise then we'll go and he'll want to respond, okay? It was on a technical matter. No, that's okay, that's all right. You made a good presentation, we got it, okay? All right. Before we go into the public meeting, I think Councilman Heenan, you wanted to make a statement? And since we only have 2 microphones working here, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to state it for the record to the folks who gave the presentation and the sponsor of the bill, and those who see the public benefit and the opportunity for community benefits agreements and an additional revenue to the city, that in concept, I think we are getting closer to moving our city forward. I think the devil is certainly into the details, as you well know, and it was brought out in the record today that I've been dealing with outdoor advertising and digital displays or digital signs for a little over 3 years now. So for consistencies, I continue to work with the sponsor of this bill. As Councilwoman Tasco had indicated, that this is not a finished product, but we will get there, I'm sure, and we will do that with continued outreach as has been done. It's been indicated that approximately 50 stakeholders were engaged in the process, which is extremely encouraging, working with the administration as well. The consistency is certainly in the measurements, in the audio, and the visual and illumination, and several other things that we continue to work out throughout this process. So to the sponsor, Councilman Squilla, I appreciate your ongoing dialogue and working towards a finished product.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I fixed I think we pulled out the connections below us. But I just want to say to Councilman Heen, yes, absolutely, and also looking forward to, since the major concern on a lot of these signs are brightness, and the complaints we get most are from digital signs are brightness, and that's why it's important to be able to enforce that issue, and that's why the legislation moving forward very soon will be able to handle the enforcement of brightness, and I think maybe the belt and suspenders mode of having both nits and foot candles as part of measuring the brightness will really give people the wherewithal to understand it, and then also understand how we can enforce it so we don't affect the quality of life of anybody surrounding that area. So looking forward to seeing this come out of committee, and then other changes that need to be put in as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Being no further questions or comments, we will now we'll recess our public hearing and go into the public meeting of the Rules Committee, and the chair recognizes Councilman Good.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I move that the amendment to Bill 140906 be approved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the amendment to Bill 140906 is approved. Councilman Good.
I move that Bill 140906 as amended be reported out of this committee with favorable recommendation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, Bill number 140906 as amended is reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation. Councilman Good?
I move the amendment to Bill 141031 be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the amendment is approved. Councilman?
I move that Bill 141031 as amended be reported out of this committee with favorable recommendation and suspension of the rules to allow first reading in the next session of council.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, Bill number 141031 as amended is reported out of committee favorably with a rule suspension. Councilman Good.
I move that the amendment to Bill 150007 be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the amendment is approved. Councilman Good.
I move that Bill 150007 as amended be reported out of this committee with favorable recommendation, suspension of the rules to allow first reading in the next section of council.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, Bill number 140936 is reported as committee favorably with a rule suspension. That concludes the business of the Rules Committee today. Thank you all for your participation.